I think it's fully appropriate tonight that we have a very special, unannounced guest that's going to be joining us, along with our very own Eric Tysinger, our local Dallas favorite. He will be joined by Miguel Cervantes. Miguel is the original Alexander Hamilton in the Chicago production of Hamilton. Happy to have you guys with us. It's going to be a fun conversation. But before we do that, I need to embarrass you guys a little bit, if you don't mind, and just say a few words about who you are. So Eric was resident production stage manager for the Dallas Theater Center for 5 seasons. Dallas Theater Center is a great friend of DSM. Wonderful theater. They do wonderful work. And Eric was there for that 5-year period. But he continues his work in the DFW community today. His career's taken him all over the country, working in live entertainment. He's worked in theater, dance, opera, ballet, corporate events. Eric was one of 12 out of 35,000 applicants that were selected to Walt Disney World's inaugural class of entertainment apprentices. That's a big honor. He currently teaches technical theater at Fort Worth Country Day School and is the theater manager for the school's Performing Arts Center. Eric lives in Fort Worth. We love that you're nearby, Eric. It's great. With his wife, Teresa, their 11-year-old daughter, Emma. His Broadway credits include The Last Ship. I saw it, loved it. Hamilton, off-Broadway, Elvis, People, and All the President's Men. So quite a resume. We're really thrilled to have you with us. Thank you for joining us. A little bit about Miguel Cervantes. Okay, Miguel is best known for his role as Alexander Hamilton at the Chicago Private Bank Theater. He's acted on Broadway in If Then, American Idiot, saw it too, loved it, and the 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee. Additional theater credits included Giant, Tales, Henry Mudge, and more. On the big screen, his work includes The Greatest, NBT, and Tramps. He's also appeared on television shows such as Person of Interest, Brain Dead, Madam Secretary, Royal Pains, The Blacklist, All My Children. Boy, this list just goes on and on, Miguel. This is amazing. He graduated from Emerson College with a BFA in musical theater. And I got to say, guys, I am just honored to be able to moderate this conversation with the two of you. What a wonderful gift that you're giving to us tonight.
It's so funny for you to say that list of TV shows, because as people have been stuck in their houses for so long over this last this last year, I've gotten numerous text messages and emails saying, "Hey, were you on the blacklist?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I was selling guns to Pee Wee Herman." And like, wait a minute, I think I saw you on the Royal Pains. I was like, yeah, I was running down the thing. So as people are revisiting these shows, I'm sort of getting flashbacks of those days on the TV set.
Yeah, I guess there's like, one of those silver linings of the pandemic. People are catching up on all their TV shows that they didn't get a chance to see. But speaking of the pandemic, I want to throw a question out to you guys, just out of curiosity. Because we're all wondering what we're doing during the pandemic. What are we doing during the pandemic? So we're going to ask you, what were you guys doing, or have you been doing during the pandemic? And feel free to kick us off, Miguel, and then we'll turn to Eric.
Sort of goes through waves of creativity and video games, and was in Chicago when the thing hit. I was on Broadway. I just started. The short story is I just started on Broadway in New York on March the 3rd. I finished in Chicago on January 5th, and I started on Broadway on March the 3rd. 10 whole performances later, I came off stage after Quiet Uptown. I don't know how much you know the show, but everyone's crying, and I come off stage and go around the thing, and everyone's looking at the phone, and we're like, well, what happened? And I said, guys, what's going on? And Daniel Breaker, who was Aaron Burr at the time, was like, hey, Tom Hanks got the Rona. And we were like, oh no. And when Tom Hanks gets it, that means it's over, it's done. So that was the last day, and I ended up back in Chicago. And I sort of found myself trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I've played the guitar a lot. I've gotten a lot better at playing the guitar. I did a musical. I know there's been a few of them, But one of the first ones that I think it was one of the first ones is called A Killer Party. Go to killerpartymusical.com, and we all got music and scripts, and we had to figure out. And nowadays, in this COVID era, we're all very good with sound and lighting and now video mixing, because we've all had to sort of get accustomed to sort of making our own content for whatever. And so I had this huge setup with lights and camera, and we did this whole musical. I've never met anybody in the show because we did it all over online. And so if you're curious for something new, a new musical from my friends of mine, Kate and Nathan, they wrote it, and it's really cool. It's called The Killer Party. So stuff like that has sort of filled my time. I've done a few Zoom readings with people like this in lots of squares of new musicals and new works. I've done some online concerts, some Hamilton stuff, just to kind of keep in the groove. I invented a golf product. It's a little pouch with a little clip here that goes on your shoe, and you hold your ball marker and your divot tool, and you put your golf tees in here, and you can clip it on your pocket or your shoe, and so you don't keep everything out of your pocket. It's called a shoe caddy, SHUCADDY. That's been I've been kind of working on this little product that I've had, in the extra time to work on. So, that's sort of been the story, and that's where we are now, looking like it's going to be another 6 months till we get back in there.
Can we go to shoecaddy.com?
www.shoecaddy.com.
Okay.
Alexander Hamilton himself making shoe caddies with a sewing machine in the dressing room.
All right.
Believe
good,
it.
Good. Well, hey, we're not above a shameless plug. So absolutely.
Side hustle. We call that in the business. The official term is side hustle.
Side hustle. All right. Good. Thanks for that, Miguel. All right, Eric, tell us what you've been up to.
I don't know how I'm supposed to follow that. I might as well just sign off now. I think I'm just gonna sit over here and listen. I'm gonna mute for the rest of the evening. Gosh, it hasn't been quite as exciting as that. I finished my 15-month time of the tour just before the shutdown. I actually finished before the new year of the March we shut down, to come back home to my wife and daughter, who, my wife, of course, thought she wanted me home. And then at about April, we made it to about April till she was realizing, there was no tour to send me back to. So we sort of had to figure out how to get through this together. I sort of turned my attention to some local efforts that I hadn't really had a chance to get connected with on the road back and forth to New York. I have taken a big role in the Slaughter Family Arts Awards, which is run by Dr. J. Max Slaughter, who started a program called Music Meets Medicine. And he and his wife have started a scholarship program for area private school students. So my wife and I are part of that organization. And then I have had the absolute privilege of getting connected with DSM and Devon Miller, the education program, and his team. I was able to help launch last year's virtual awards program. I was fortunate enough to stay on with that. And then full-time wise, I've been taking care of the Fort Worth Country Day Performing Arts Center. It's been interesting. I feel a little bit more like Steven Spielberg than I do any theater artist, because we've been filming everything and editing everything. So my world has been so much in filming and editing. But trying to stay active in the community. I've done a lot of this kind of thing. I have enjoyed talking about our craft and sharing that. We don't often get to stop and share it with folks like yourselves or educational institutions that don't always get to stop and have us on. So I've been on Zoom a lot lately with this kind of thing.
Wow.
So trying to stay busy.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you've been real busy, and that's great. And I just want to say we are deeply appreciative of your work with DSM. Having somebody with your skill set and your resume to support what we're doing means a lot. And thank you very much for that. Hey, I was curious. Can you guys share with us a little bit about what, your roles in Hamilton and sort of how you came about getting there. I'm interested in sort of what was the path to getting into Hamilton. And on this one, why don't we start with Eric, and then we'll go to Miguel.
It's funny, Miguel and I had the pleasure of doing Giant together here in Dallas. We actually rehearsed it in New York and did it here in Dallas. And I mention it because it was sort of, that was ultimately the beginning of the journey. I did the show with Miguel, which was directed by Michael Greif. And shortly after we debuted that here, Jeffrey Seller, who is the producer of Hamilton, came down to do a musical at the Dallas Theater Center called Fly, which choreographed by Andy, who did Hamilton, Alex Lacamoire, who did the music. It was a really huge production. And I remember very clearly the conversation of who was going to stage manage this thing came up. And DTC said, well, our resident has just worked with Michael on Giant, and we'd love for you to talk to him. And so we met, we hit it off. We have remained great friends. I talked to him just yesterday, in fact, and he and so I did that show. I stage managed for him, which was 6 weeks in New York. We did a workshop. We ultimately then brought it to Dallas we did flying workshops all over the country, including Las Vegas at the FOI headquarters. So that's how I got to know the sort of Hamilton team. And while I was doing that show, Jeffrey said, would you be interested in working in New York? We'd like to have you in New York. And I said, yes. And at the time he said to me, and I'll never forget the day, and he said, well, I've got two projects. I've got Sting's about to do a musical called The Last Ship that is ready for production. And we've got Lynn's next piece called Hamilton, which is going to be a mega hit. It's just a little further behind. It's about to go into a workshop. And so he said, let's see which one of those we can get you on. And it's all worked out fine. There are moments I wish it had gone the other way and I'd been with the Hamilton family sooner, but I ended up doing The Last Ship, had a great experience, and was told at the time, hey, just wait, your time for Hamilton will come. And then I was at Fort Worth Country Day doing some work for them, and got the phone call from the production supervisor, and he said, hey, we've got a position that has opened on the first national tour. That team left to go do the San Francisco production, which you might remember opened in Puerto Rico and then ultimately went to San Francisco. And that team peeled off of the first national tour and opened up a spot for me. And so they called you immediately. Of course, you don't say no when that phone call comes. And so the rest is history. And then 15 months later, still in the family, just took a little break to be home with my wife and kiddo.
Great. Thank you for that. What a great story. Miguel, would love to hear your path to Hamilton as well.
Eric, are you telling me that you took a break just before everything stopped?
Dude, it's crazy. I literally did. I got home December 1st of the year, so it was 2018, I guess. And as soon as I landed back here, Country Day just called and said, dude, this is crazy timing, but we lost our guy. Can you come help? And so I've just been fortunate.
That's good. So my story starts in 2000, I don't know, some early in the 2000s. I auditioned for In the Heights about 28 and a half times. And never got really far. I never was I was not the right fit for that show. So, I was doing If Then on Broadway, and one of the gals in the show was Stephanie, who ends up being Andy Blankenbuehler's his associate. And so I hear about the show, hear it's cool. Oh, it's the In the Heights guys. That's cool. Sounds cool. So I go into audition for Hamilton. It's when Hamilton is at the Public Theater. It's about to take a move to Broadway. And I audition for the show. And I am not throwing away my shot. And they say, okay, thank you so much. There's the door. That's the end of my Hamilton journey. So flash forward a little while. Hamilton becomes a huge hit. I take my wife to see Hamilton for our anniversary in 2015, and I see the show, and I was like, yeah, that sure would have been cool. Wow, I wish I would have a chance to do that one day. But that's not how it goes. And then they call again in 2016 and say, hey, they want to see you again for Hamilton. It's for Broadway. Lynn is leaving, and there's also going to be a Chicago production. So, and I'm like, well, clearly I'm going to go to this audition. But at this time in my life, I've now been out of Broadway for a little while. Broadway's a tough life for married people. Eric may know this, because I work at night. My wife worked in the day. She had a job in New York City. It was I can't remember the exact title, but it was something like Sugar Mama, is what I like to call it. And I was super happy to be at home taking care of the house, and she worked during the day, and it was awesome. And then I got it, and this was after If Then, when she was in the daytime and I was at night. We never saw each other. So I thought, well, maybe there's something else. Maybe there's other life here. There's teaching. There's I started a baseball company teaching little kids how to play baseball. So I've always had like ideas in my head. And people would say, oh, do you want to go in for SpongeBob the musical? I'm like, oh, man, no, I don't want to go in for SpongeBob. You want to go in for the second national tour of Jersey Boys to play the third guy to the left, and I was like, I just don't think that's worth it to leave my family. So I was kind of feeling like there's this other pull to maybe move to something else, maybe focus on TV film. And I was like, of course, unless Lin-Manuel calls and wants me to be Hamilton or something. And so Lynn didn't call me, but I did get a call for this audition. I go to the audition thinking it's going to be very similar to all my other auditions for these people. And I did all the things, and they said, well, come back tomorrow. And Alex wants to see you. Alex Lacamoire wants to say hello. So I saw Alex the next day, and it was just me and Alex in a room together. And we're working on this stuff. And I knew Alex a little bit, but not really very well. And then he's like, hey, you want to come over here and see Tommy? And so I went over there and saw Tommy. I'd never met Tommy before, and we had a little back and forth. And I did, Aaron Burr and Sir and my shot. And he's like, that's great, man. Thank you. So I go home, and they're like, hey, they want to see you again. Okay, great. So I go in the next time, a week later, and it's a Thursday, and I go in there, and there's 25 people in this room, and Lynn is there, and Jeffrey's there, and I mean literally 25 people in this room. And I do all the things, and I finish the audition, and I go out of the room, and Oscar Eustace was there. And I don't know if you know who Oscar Eustace is, but he's this huge bear of a man, huge beard, huge hair, and I had met him doing Giant at the Public when we did that. And he walks out, and the Public was a co-producer of the Broadway production. He comes out of the room, and he gives me this, he's huge, and I'm a little guy, and he gives me this huge bear hug, and he said, Miguel, that was beautiful. And I said, thanks, man. I don't know what that means, but thank you. And so I call my wife, and I was like, what's going on? And then they said, hey, listen, you were awesome. That was amazing. They loved you. They want to see you again. I was like, okay. So I got to go in one more time. The next day, the next week, I go in again. And this time there's less people, but Lynn is there, and Jeffrey's there. And I did, like Hurricane and Quiet Uptown and some of the second act stuff. And later on that night, my wife, interestingly enough, had been taking a new job. She had just given her 6-week notice at her old job. She was starting her new job the next week. The next week, she was starting to run the entire events department of a new meat restaurant in New York City. She was going to be even more of a sugar mama. And I said, babe, we're moving to Chicago, because my agent said, listen, what do you think happened? And I said, I don't know what happened. Lynn is leaving next week, so I'm assuming I have to start rehearsals for Broadway. They were like, yes, you're going to be on Broadway. And then 4 weeks later, you're going to start rehearsals for Chicago, and then you're going to lead the Chicago company in Chicago. So I took over for Javier as the understudy. I was the first Hamilton cast after the original Broadway cast. And I did the show on Broadway with, Chris Jackson and Renee and Oak and Anthony and a lot of the David. And then I took over in Chicago, and a mere 1,250 performances later, we closed Chicago 3.5 years later. So it's been quite an unbelievable journey. And you might ask, like, what do you? People ask me a lot. What did you think? How did you feel? What was it like when you got that job? And I would ask you, like, what exactly do you feel when you're told that you just won the lottery. Like, what is that feeling? Because what did you do? And that's the feeling, because that's not something that happens to me. That's like, you hear the story of someone else, but it did. And it's been an unbelievable, I cannot wait to get back up on stage.
Wow. Wow. What a great story. When you think about the resiliency it took for you to go for it and then not get it and keep on trucking and keep on trucking, and we talk a lot about that right now in our business. We're like, oh man, we're all on hold. What are we going to do? We got to reopen DSM someday. But
yeah.
And so we've been preaching, be resilient, let's bounce back strong, and I love that story you told, because it really supports what we're hoping we can do too. So thank you for that inspiration.
You can and you will. You can and you will. You can and you will.
Speaking of stories, you got me thinking, Miguel, when you were talking, like maybe it's a little insider baseball, but in the theater, we love to tell our stories about the time something happened, like, oh, I had a show one time and this story happened, or here's a person that I met, or whatever. I'd love for you guys to just give us a little story tonight, maybe your favorite one or what have you. Think about it for a minute. We'll start with Eric this time and just kind of say, like, what's a fun, theater story you can share with the gang here?
Sure. I'll give you two sort of not horror stories, but like bad days, and maybe Miguel's got some good ones. But we were in Hartford, Connecticut the first time I had to stop the show. And for those of you, who don't know, stage managers basically are from the time half hour happens until the show goes down. Pretty much stage management is the only voice that can ultimately guide the production. So if it's our decision to stop, it's our decision to start, it's our decision to sort of work our way through any problems that arise. This particular night in Hartford, we started the show, and about every, I don't know, let's say 3 minutes, the sound system would completely shut off for 3 seconds while it rebooted to its backup system. So that happened the first time, and of course, you have 22 people on stage who are starting to get uneasy, and it continued to happen 2 or 3 times. And we got to the point where we were headed into a section of the show where they do a lot of rifle work. And if you've seen the show, the twirling of the rifles and the rifleography in the choreography, if you cannot count that, or you cannot hear that, or it is messing up, it's kind of hard to keep going. We were getting to Guns and Ships when they do all that, or Right Hand Man, I guess, when they do all the danceography, and then the muskets come out and they start to do musket work. And had we gotten to that section and the sound would have been unstable, it could have been dangerous. So, it's one of those moments every stage manager doesn't really want to deal with. And certainly when you're doing Hamilton, and those folks who have paid great money and sacrificed great things to be there, the last thing you want to do is get on the God mic and say, we have to stop. But it's at the end of the day, it's just a show. And so safety is more important. So we stopped the show. We were able to fix it. And the thing about stopping a show that it's hard to describe to you here in this calm evening with nothing happening around us is when you stop the show, you have all 22 people trying to figure out what's doing, where are we going to start? How does that affect the band? How does that affect the light cues? How does that affect the scenery? And so you're trying to coordinate that as fast as you can with fielding questions, and you're talking on a headset to 15 people at once. It's a lot. It's a lot to happen. So that was one terrible night in Hartford, and Hartford is not the greatest city to be in anyway. I mean, God love Hartford, Connecticut, but there's, when you're there for 3 weeks in the winter, there's not a ton to do in Hartford, Connecticut. And then the other one I'll just share with briefly, I was covering as the PSM for a vacation. I was in charge for 2 weeks, like really in charge of the whole thing. And I happened to be out at front of house, and this woman got up to go to the restroom, and she had dental surgery that day, but she was not going to miss Hamilton. So she stood up too fast and passed out in the aisle. And it was with about 10 minutes to go in the show. And I was literally stuck with, do we stop it now or don't we? But ultimately with someone, sort of fainted in the aisle, you have to stop. So those are my two stoppage stories. Both worked out great. I've got many. I'm sure Miguel's got plenty of awesome stories.
It's so funny. I forget that the worst one, my terrible story, is my very first performance on Broadway. Like, I've been in rehearsals for 5 weeks, and if you know anything about how sort of productions work, when someone goes in, you rehearse by yourself with a piano and a director, and you learn the entire show with just one person, and then you get 1 or 2 runs, maybe a couple of go-throughs with the cast on stage, and then you go. So there's not like this whole beautiful, we love each other process where we learn everything together. So that's how someone gets put into a show that's already going. So that's what I did for Hamilton, Alexander Hamilton in Hamilton, for my first performance. So this has all happened. My adrenaline is up to here, and we start my shot, and there's this sound. It's like the whole time, and it will stop, and then, and my shot is pretty loud, but you could hear it just above. And so I'm not throwing away my shot. Bang! So they said, and I think I don't remember if we started the next thing or we didn't start the next thing, but they said, they came on and said, we're going to stop, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to stop here. And 45 minutes, they almost canceled the show because it was going to go too long past the band. It turned out that the hearing assistants headset, something had gotten cross-wired with the sound, so that was what the interference was. But I was sat in my dressing room, my very first performance, and my friends, I've got like 20 people in the audience, and they're like, Miguel, what's going on? I said, I don't even know what my next song is. What am I supposed? I don't know what happened. But that was my first show. But the very first show ever. But my favorite story is this is you do what you have to do. The show must go on if it can. If no one's going to be hurt, then keep going.
That's right.
I know we've forgotten lots of words. There's been lots of like missed dialogue. There's all that happens all the time, but this one. So in the second act, I'm wearing a green suit, and we do the cabinet battles against Lafayette, Jefferson, and Hamilton. Do the cabinet battle, and I'm like, turn around, bend over, I'll show you where my shoe fits. And I do this big lunge, right? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, we do the rest of the scene. And then George Washington says, Hamilton, come here. And he's like, calm down. I'm like, what's going on? And I'm, in there, I'm in the scene, and I look down at the audience, and someone is looking up. I can see these people, and I see this woman go. I was like, she's pointing at why she pointed right at me, and like was caught talking to her buddy. Like, I was like, something's amiss. So I do another line, and I look over here, and then I kind of glance down, and it was like slow motion. I look down, and the pants that we wear are side zipper, so the front is just a seam, and this seam has come full open, just like oval shaped open. And at the time, I'm wearing white drawers over my black tights. I don't know whose idea that was, but I'm wearing these, glowing white drawers over my tights. And so I'm like, and I start sweating. I don't know what to do. And so, and to make matters worse, there are 4 more songs before I go off stage. I stay on stage until Room Where It Happens, which is 4 songs away. So I figured out how to, you're the audience, and I'm standing there, my pants are open here, and I'm like doing the whole show like this, and I would turn this way or this way, and like everything was sort of halfway to the audience, halfway to the back. It was, and to top it all off, a friend of mine was really good buddies with this guy. You may know him. His name is Al Roker. And Al Roker had done a piece on my wife and I and my family that day. So he was seeing the show that night. And so Al Roker's in the audience. And I was like, Al, did you see my pants? He said, yeah, I saw your pants. So I had a room where it happens. I run off stage. I was like, give me some tape. Give me some tape. And we taped up the thing, and I had to go back on stage. And I'm not sure what happens because I have to wear those pants again. Oh, she got in there and she safety pinned the pants together. But we kept going, and I figured out a way to not be distracted. In retrospect, I wish I would have been like made a gesture to be like, I know it's there. Like, I know, we all know, figured out how to work it into the scene. And that's how that went.
So did that audience member come up and try to get your autograph after the show?
Yeah, she was really excited. I'm not sure what that was all about. It was.
Wow, what a story! What a story. Well, Eric, back to you for a second, because a little bird told me about something, and I wanted you to. I understand that there's a story about man number one coat.
Man number one's coat. So Miguel will get, most of you will be like, really, you stopped this whole thing to tell us a story, but Miguel will appreciate it if nothing else. So I'll set the scene for you. We're in Detroit. Now, Detroit, if you're ever wondering what the smallest venue to hold Hamilton's tour is, it is the Fox Theater, or it is not the Fox, it is forgot the name of the theater in Detroit, the one that's in the mall there. Anyway, it is as small as the theater can be for us to fit. So the stage is shoehorned in there. It's all the way up against the back wall, very much like Broadway, Miguel. So there's no crossover. Now, up until this point, we had spent 4 or 5 months of the show with a crossover, which means as a dancer or performer, you can get from one side of the stage to the other by crossing upstage of the brick wall. In Detroit, for our company, this was the first city they had encountered in months where you had to go to the basement. So what that means, I want you to think about this for a second. If you've seen the show, it's 3 hours long. It's nonstop movement. These performers had to go down 2 flights of stairs, cross through a basement, and up 2 flights of stairs every time they wanted to cross the stage. Now, Miguel in the New York company, it's set up that way, but they have rehearsed it and have ways to help it. We had to modify, but we couldn't modify it the way the New York production does. So anyway, okay, so the show loads in. We'll go through this, I think, a little later, but basically the opening night of a city, y'all, is the load in finishes at 5 o'clock. We take a 30-minute break. We do sound check. We do a very quick change rehearsal, and then we're on. The dressers, of which there are 8 or 9, depending on the city, have never put on these clothes of these actors ever before. They've maybe met them for 10 minutes backstage before we start. And so the show starts pretty slow for the dressers, and they always get cocky. We always hear this all the time, like, we've done Les Mis. This is gonna be nothing. We've done Les Mis. We've done the big ones. I'm like, okay, I'm just telling you, when we get to the coat business, you'll see why we're warning you. So sure enough, we get to the first set of coat business, which is tracking a bunch of blue coats, because they wear sometimes blue coats, sometimes red coats. And so all of a sudden I get a voice in my ear from the other side of the stage saying, we've lost man one's blue coat. So at that point, we radio wardrobe, we're looking for man one's blue coat. So then they're like, we don't have it, we can't find it, we don't know where it is. So the head carpenter of the show, who has nothing to do with wardrobe, has had to move his operations for the show 30 feet in the air on the jump. So he comes on the headset and says, hey, if you guys need any help down there, I can come help. I said, no, you're 30 feet in the air. Don't worry about it. We'll find it. Meanwhile, I'm now trying to make sure the show's going. I'm down running 2 flights of stairs halfway through the basement. Have you found the blue coat? Nope, we haven't found the blue coat. Gave me the wrong coat. I said, nope, that's man 4's blue coat. I need man 1 blue coat. So this goes back and forth. All of a sudden, we've ran so much now that the other stage manager on the other side is out of breath. So she's on the headset going, we still don't have it. He's going to have to go without a coat. About that time, on the headset, the head carpenter pipes up. He has worked his way 30 feet down the ladder, made it to the basement, and simply says, I have man 1's coat if someone would like to get it from the basement. No idea how we got it to this day. No one knows where that blue coat came from, how he ended up down 30 feet, a ladder. through the chaos, but we found Man One's blue coat for the second entrance.
Listen, when something like that is happening, like if something isn't there, it's terrifying. Everything happens so fast. Like if the sword isn't there, or where's my pen? Where's my pen? Where's the thing? I gotta go. I mean, it is the dance backstage is as important and amazing as the dance that's going on stage. 100%.
Amen.
Wow. What a great story. I'm glad that I got a little tip on that one, Eric. That's amazing.
It's a good one.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey, I thought I would maybe open it up to some of the chat questions. I got a few here, and from the folks that are on the call. So either one of you can take these if you'd like. Let's start with what are the different types of tours Hamilton has, and how are they different?
What's funny about that question is I'm not sure. Broadway's called Broadway.
Uptown. It's Uptown.
Hamilton Uptown.
They call it Uptown, I think.
Eliza, or the Chicago company, though we sat there for 3.5 years, was called the Eliza Tour. The next show that they started in San Francisco for 5 months and then moved to LA for 5 months or 6 months. And then it became a regular tour, was called Angelica. This is going to be a trivia question. The next company was the company that started in Puerto Rico and then moved to San Francisco. Can anyone tell me what the name of that tour is? The And Peggy Tour.
And Peggy.
Awesome.
And Peggy. And then the final tour, the tour was called the Philip Company. So Australia is in rehearsals next week.
Wow.
In Australia, they are in rehearsals next week, and they will open the Australian company in, I think, about 2 months. At the beginning of March, the Australian Hamilton company will begin production in Melbourne, Sydney, Melbourne, one of them.
That's amazing.
And then the London company is also there. So there are when we all start back up, there will be 7 companies. 7, right? 7.
I think it's 7. If Germany happens, I think in Germany the 8th. Germany would be the 8th if it happens.
Germany, there will be 7 companies of Hamilton in the country. 2 of which will be traversing traditional tours like Eric worked on, traversing the country, and then 3 companies that are sort of more stationary, LA, San Francisco, or maybe not, but and then maybe 3. So and then Australia and London, which will stay there, even though I think they're all called tours except for Broadway.
And Miguel, I know that there are the differences, guys, are not huge. They have done a pretty good job at consistency of. I would say, given the size of the animal, it's pretty good. There was a brief time when they went from New York to, I guess, Miguel, it's y'all in Chicago, where Andy got very excited and wanted to try to change the tracking a little bit.
No, it wasn't Chicago. It was some of the tours. There's a thing called Universal Swings. This is an interesting story. Universal Swings are guys and gals who will learn numerous parts and be scattered to any one of the companies. So they'll go to Broadway, or they'll go to Angelica or Eliza, and they'll say, okay, today you're Man 1 in Angelica. And they go to their little book, and you would think, oh, they know Man 1. But in the tours, like he's saying, there are just enough differences, numbers, they go here different. It's just different enough that these people have to know not only 4 different roles, but 5 different productions and 5 different versions of those roles. They are super
amazing humans. If you ever get a chance to talk to one, it's worth picking their brain, because I don't know how I truly don't know how they do it.
Wow, that's amazing. There's a question that lines up really nicely with that, which is from the audience tonight. For Miguel, how often do you have to improvise lines, or does it happen perfectly most of the time? How do you go forward when someone changes something?
Well, I don't know. I've never messed up. I've never messed up a word ever. I've never forgotten any words. Interestingly enough, there is never any part of the show that is improvised. Not one part. It looks
Not
like
one beat.
sometimes
Not one beat.
there are things that happen in the show that are very sort of naturalistic and free form, but there is nothing improvised. It's always the closest to improvisation is that I would ever get is during What Did I Miss Into the Cabinet Battle. Our Lafayette Jefferson sometimes would do a different dance move, and I would have to try to emulate their dance move later on. But that's about as loose as it got. It was, all the cabinet battles are the same, more or less blocking, and the words are always the same, even though it feels a little sort of, mess around, like we're goofing around with each other. Like it's very regimented, and I think that even some of the jokes that look like they're mess ups are built into the show, which is, I hate to give away the farm there, but and that, I think that makes it cleaner. It makes it easier. I mean, if something goes wrong, if there's a word missed, the only time I ever had to like really think on my feet, our Aaron Burr got sick or something during Farmer Refuted, and he has to come off and pull me off the thing, and he's like, Hamilton, what are you doing? And I'm like, Burr, I'd rather be divisive, and he wasn't there, and I was like, so nobody grabbed me, and I was up there with the guy, and so I had to jump off the box, and I said, yo, I'd rather be divisive. That was like my big improv. I think Lynn would be all right with it.
Yeah, good for you, man. I wish I would have been there that night.
But I was definitely sweating.
Yeah, sure. So somebody else wrote in, is it true that your understudy is literally changing costumes as you do in case they have to jump in quickly?
I don't know if Eric, I don't know if you ever had experienced this, but only a few times, and I literally like less than 5, in 3.5 years, did I ever call the stage manager or call them over and say, I need them to suit up. Most times the stage understudies are there, they're ready, but they're in their plain clothes, in regular, just sort of on call. And the only time that I actually had to go out, I almost passed out in the beginning of the show, and I had to go on and do the thing. And I went off stage and I was like, I can't finish. Somebody, and so then they go, bam, Eric makes the call, the guy goes down there, and they throw on their costume. And then at the next, and what could happen is, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to stop and then start over when that happens. Or all of a sudden, Hamilton's different. And that happened to me, I think maybe twice. Once I felt sick, and once my voice just gave out in intermission. And I went off at intermission, and the second act was a little handsome black fella. So you can understand that the audience might have been like, wait, I didn't. Oh no, it wasn't. It was after say no. It was almost like halfway through the second act, so almost the end of the show. And I was like, I can't go anymore. And they brought Cameron on, and he had to finish. So it is sort of a mad dash to get the person ready. And only twice did I say they need to be ready. And so the guy's standing off stage in full costume. And then I'm like, no, I got it. I think I'm okay. It's like, sorry, dude, I'm so sorry. But that happened to me a couple times.
Yeah, wow. I would say in general, the answer, I agree with Miguel. For us, at least in the touring world, that the number of times that we actually dress them along, play along, dress along with us is very rare. I would say that doesn't happen that often. I did have it done twice in my 15 months where somebody was sick enough that we needed that it literally would be advantageous to be 15 seconds of swap time, but in general we can get somebody ready in about 5 minutes. Typically speaking, about 5 minutes you can be ready to go.
Again, these are people that are in the theater, anywhere from 5 to 10 of them on any given night, that are just there in case, and they're ready, and that's their job, is to be ready in 5 minutes to take over for any role. There's one girl who knows all the Schuyler sisters, one guy who knows Hamilton, Burr, and the King, and one guy, and sometimes Jefferson. Like it's crazy. It's crazy what these people do.
Wow. Wow. Well, we have time for a couple more, but I want to read this one because I just like the question. What is the quickest costume change in Hamilton?
Ooh.
I mean, I guess, Miguel, if you don't count slip on a coat, there are some coat changes that I think are within 10 seconds of one another. I think it's going, at least for us on tour, it was going into the ladies going into their ball gowns, going into Helpless.
Yeah. I was always back there watching the gals run off stage, like bunny
they're in
hop
army
over,
gear.
and then
They've literally they've just gone out with a musket at the end of I guess it's Right Hand Man, and literally they have that big boom, and in a minute and 12 seconds they've got to be in full ball gown.
Now,
Wow.
and the cool thing about the way that they built these costumes is a lot of like the whole gown goes over. Hamilton does. I don't know if anybody else really does, but twice in the second act, I go from all green to all black, and so I go
That's
all
pretty
the way.
Quick too.
I mean, it's like a song. It's like a minute and a half, which is like a year in quick change. But I don't think very many other people in the show ever go all the way into a new suit. It's always a vest or a jacket or pants. I mean, or not very, very pants, vest or a jacket or a hat. Hamilton, I think, is the only one who actually goes full down to the skivvies off stage for any real full change.
How fast was your Theodosia? Did you have to get the Theodosia?
I changed the Theodosia. I would do my hair.
Yeah, just the hair. That's what it is.
Yeah, we got it down long enough that I could go and gargle and clean out my nose. You don't want to know what happens backstage before songs. It's not pretty because there's dust.
Man.
It's dry. There's crap in the air. It's just these theaters are so old, and so I would get a trash can and clean my nose out to get out.
Dude, listen, we that's our job. Some of our stage men. I mean, I had one young lady who was prone to nosebleeds. And by the time about 6 weeks into my training, I knew exactly what size to cut the little nose plug to get her through a song. I knew exactly the size of her nose cavity. I knew exactly what she needed. We needed a trash can, the scissors, the nose plug, and tissues. And I knew where she came off stage, where she went on. And sometimes you literally, like Miguel said, you're literally following him around with a trash can. If he's got a little cold or something, you're like, okay, right into here.
It's real life back there. Real life.
It's a very glamorous business for everybody on this call. Hey, I wanted to leave a couple of minutes because I wanted each of you to give us a sense of what does the future hold for you? Like, where do you see yourself going next? Maybe where do you dream you would be going next? Just like to hear a little bit about what your hopes and dreams are. And you got either one of you guys.
Miguel, go ahead, buddy.
It's a great question. I always sort of think of the entertainment biz for myself anyway. Like I was saying before, I kind of felt like before Hamilton happened, I was sort of ready for the next thing. I think as actors, as entertainers, and especially the onstage folks, it's not it very, very rarely is a lifelong thing. To be I'm in the 1% right now, and it's not the 1% that Bernie Sanders despises. It's the 1% of actors who can make a living being on stage. There's so many people who would love to do this who never get the opportunity, who would love to do this, and so I take it's huge responsibility, and I'm honored and I'm humbled to be part of it. But I'm not going to have these youthful good looks and golden cords forever. So
I don't believe it.
So maybe I will, at least 5 more years. But when I've always loved teaching, I've always like I did baseball. I always loved sort of teaching young kids and like little kids. Like I was teaching them baseball and music and I've always thought of when I grew up, and I think of Dallas often. I think of the Garland Civic Theater. That's where I grew up doing theater as a kid. And I always think of, wouldn't it be amazing to sort of at some point recreate what I had as a kid, and sort of be able to pass that amazing thing on to some young people. Because New York is, it's not the greatest city to live in with a family. It's not the greatest town. If you have a whole lot of money, it's really great, I hear. Uh, but the idea of maybe sort of taking what I had as a kid, and what I've learned throughout the years and my success, and passing that on and creating some amazing shows and opportunities for young people feels like something that would be fulfilling to me. I've never been in this biz to be famous. People are like, "Oh, you're famous," and I'm like, "Yes, I'm a very big deal in a very small circle." You know what I mean? In a very small world, I'm a big deal, but soon it's not going to be. And I want to be able to take what I've learned and pass it on, and help young people create. And so I think that is where I'll aim, but I don't aim, if Hamilton, you guys, Combe Wilkinson, you know who Combe Wilkinson is, right? Combe Wilkinson is and then Ted Neely,
Yeah.
we all knew this Ted Neely is, right? So I want it to be Combe Wilkinson, Ted Neely, and Miguel Cervantes. Those old guys that did that role forever, and then finally they quit. That's what I want to be before this whole other thing. So they're gonna have to drag me kicking and screaming out of Hamilton if I have my way.
Wow. I mean, that's a amazing dream, and what a gift it would be to use your knowledge and your experience and your skills, and, pass that on to young people. You know, it's just incredible. So I hope that happens for you. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Um, Eric, what are you thinking about next?
Right now I'm focused on being here for my daughter. I am in the Hamilton family as a sub. So my next few years with the Hamilton family will be coverage, I imagine. When they need a stage manager to fill in on companies around the country. I will have the option at times to go and stay connected, but not have to be gone for extended periods of time. I think at some point down the road, I want to sort of stay connected and do some more new work. I don't think my daughter's got about 8 years left before she graduates high school, which is just depressing, I might add. But I think, I'm trying to look at it as not being done, but just being on a little pause and trying to really be a good dad. And it's just hard to do from the road. So, I hope that I'll rejoin sort of full time after I'm done. In the meantime, a little motivation maybe for DSM. It would be awesome to see DSM maybe dabble in some producing or some development of new work right here at home, and certainly would love to be involved in that. And I'll certainly stay connected as long as Devon will have me and DSM will have me. I'll certainly continue to give back to DSM and our community through the High School Musical Theater Awards.
Well, great, Eric. Thank you. That's a terrific aspiration, and love the connection to family, and also, your continued passion for the theater. And I share your dream to produce at DSM, and we'd love to have you on board for that, man. So we'll
Well,
keep
listen,
talking.
if anything is going to come out of this past year, there's going to be so much art that's going to explode out into the world from all these cooped up people. So get ready, I think.
That's what I think. All
right. Well, with that, I just want to throw out a big, giant thank you to both of you. I mean, the theater gods have delivered you to us for tonight, and we have just been blessed by it. We really appreciate your time, your insight, your great stories, and for everybody on the call, thank you. Thank you for attending our events and being part of our virtual series. I can't wait to be back in the music hall, walking through there and seeing all of your faces in that hall. And I just wait for that day. And when it happens, we'll all just have a joyous moment together. So thanks, everybody. Have a great night. And we'll see you on the next Art and Business of Broadway.